name is Greg Garrison. I'm the president of Northeast Solar. Northeast Solar is a certified B Corporation. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's a great thing. We're a small team of people that have come together over the last 10 years to do what we call the good work. There's an author by the name of David White. You should read him. And in his book, Crossing the Unknown Sea, there's a page in there that describes work. And we have 8 letters that describe what we do. It's called good work, done well, for the right reasons. So what we have done and what I have done is I used to be in the transportation industry. Essentially, I burnt gas to make money. Northeast Solar is my 7th company. What I'm doing with Northeast Solar is trying to pay back that carbon debt I incurred in the transportation industry. It runs about 33 million tons. So I don't know if I'll live long enough, but the systems that I leave behind hopefully will continue to pay back that debt that I've already incurred. This is a big thing. It's a big thing for our team and a big thing for what we do. Today, primarily what I'm going to talk about is a very small segment of the solar industry, the residential marketplace. Our team is kind of focused on that part. We also do agriculture, we do commercial. I do a lot of consultation on large stuff. I do a lot of consultation for municipalities on it. But primarily our focus has been on the residential marketplace, and I'll kind of go over the reasons why that is. In today's lecture, this is the overview of what we're going to be doing. Overall, we see solar as one of the emerging technologies that are coming out there. So we're going to go through a lot of what we see in here today and how that kind of affects what happens in the residential marketplace and what we see it doing. And I'll talk a little bit about what's happened over the last 10 years. Primarily, solar has been one of the fastest growing industries of late. In 2008, for those who remember, capitalism died. That was a point at which we realized that there are some that have some and that some that will take from the others. So essentially what happened in 2008 is everything fell apart and everything went into the marketplace. And the state of Massachusetts put a lot of money into the green technologies. And in industries in general, like California and everything else, put a lot of money into green technologies. We got a lot of incentives to start building solar. They came out, before then, they came out with what's called an investment tax credit. And that investment tax credit helped launch the solar industry. What that did was it says, we're going to give you money, business people, to go invest in this technology. And we're going to give you 30% tax credit or 30% on every dollar back to you. And that accelerated the business community. That accelerated companies like Solar City, which is now Tesla, Sunrun, Vivint, a lot of the big developers like Borrego and Nextamp. It incentivized them to go out. So what we saw over the next few years is a rapid growth of solar. And now in combined, we've got about 2 million installs. We're on target for about 2 million installs at the end of this year. That's a lot. That's a lot for an industry to do into. And it's not a simple industry to install. You got to think about the logistics of putting all that stuff together. You have to have people that can carry the panels, which are roughly 3 foot by 6 foot, weigh about 40 pounds, up and down ladders, up and down scaffolding. You got to mount this stuff to roofs, you got to ballast it, you got to put it in grounds, you got to do all this work. So 2 million installs is quite a bit. And it became one of the industries that it became one of the major employers, especially after 2008, was one of the places that went up. Our company, Northeast Solar, is just a small company. And we've intentionally left it that way. We're really focused on the community. We really want to stay focused on the community. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So essentially, what we're looking at in all this growth curve and everything else is what's happening with the residential marketplace. So that'll tell you a little bit about what's available up there. But essentially, what we look at is 3 out of 10 roofs can be installed, we can install solar on. That's just the way the housing stock was developed. The way the solar installs typically is you want a southern exposure, you want a roof that's kind of wide and open, asphalt shingles are the easiest, slate you can't install on. There's a lot of reasons why that can occur. But in the United States itself, there is a big potential in the residential marketplace. In Massachusetts, we have a very small sliver that we haven't touched. We have decades of building or installations yet to be done. But 926 terawatts a year is what they estimate that the housing stock in the U.S. can do that. So the way that they looked at this was they took LiDAR images across the country where they have it available and said, this is what we believe we can install on rooftops, and this is what we believe we can get out of it. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. It's not just we can put that much solar out into the world, which is great, because when you're putting clean energy out, you're not putting fossil fuels in. But it's important for another reason. So what we have is, what is solar currently, the way that we look at it and everything else. Essentially, solar as it's installed on a house today, in our opinion, the residential power plant is stupid. It doesn't do a lot. It gets hit by photons, it excites the electrons, and it just blows them into the house or out in the grid, wherever they can go. There's really no control of that. It's just energy in, energy out, no control. So during the day when people, most lifestyle occurs, you get up in the morning, lots of energy use. Take off for school or work, very low energy use. Come home, lots of energy use. Go to bed, no energy use. When does solar occur? When you leave for work and when you come home from work. That's when all the energy happens. So all that energy, essentially, in this kind of format that we currently have, just says, well, it's just going to go into the grid, essentially. And your neighbor's going to use it, or the building on the street's going to use it. It's just going to be used in that way. So there's really no control of that. One of the reasons that it's so important to have the growth of solar the way that it was is because we needed a runway, a ramp, to start other investors and other entrepreneurs out there to start investing in the technologies that would be beneficial to solar. What do you think those are? Anybody? Yeah? Yeah. Key to what we're looking at, two things, is monitoring and storage. How many people here know how many kilowatt hours a year it takes to charge your iPhone? Owen? Anybody own an iPhone? 3 kilowatt hours. So it takes only 3 kilowatt hours to charge, but nobody knows that. Most of the time when we have people that come into our office, they say, well, I'd love to go solar. We go, fantastic. Welcome to the family. We want to put a power plant on your roof. We want another power plant in the valley. How much energy do you use? I don't know. What do you know? Well, the electrical company charges me $200 a month for my electric bill. All right. It's fair. It's a starting point. What do you think that means? I don't know. So you get this lack of knowledge because electricity has become so ubiquitous. We just walk in a room, we turn on a light, we plug in things, everything works. It's always there. We never have to think about it at all. It's just a part of our lifestyle. What we try to do in our business, it's a lot of education. So you take the homeowner, you bring them in, or you take the person who wants to buy solar, you bring them in and say, let's talk about this stuff. So a couple of things that's really important is the monitoring aspect. Right now, the monitoring in solar is pretty basic. It can read it by panel. It can read the amount of electricity you're producing at a given time. You can look at it in waveform. You can also look at your consumption in the house now. And it's just simple. They put CTs, if you're familiar with CTs, around the in and outs of your house. Reads the power, tells you what's going on. But that's about it. It doesn't say, when should I use this? How should I use this? How can I use this? Without the second piece of that, which is storage, and that's a sewn-in battery, by the way, big, beautiful, expensive thing, you can actually start storing that energy, which is the key component, because when you're not home and you're not using it, this is what you want to do. You want to store that energy for future use. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. So, currently, the model of solar, if you were installing solar, the only thing that we're selling people is economics. If they put a solar power plant on their roof, and they have their own power plant, and the power goes off, what happens? Everything's off. Power plant doesn't work. Power plant needs a signal from the utility electricity that says, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. So the minute that the power plant doesn't hear that little message that says, I'm here, it shuts off. That's a safety feature. So even if you have solar on your house and the power goes out, there's nothing there. So we can't sell them backup generation or anything else. So the only thing we sell them is economics. Does anybody have an idea how the economics work currently? Anyone? Ever heard of net metering and all the conversations around net metering? Net metering basically says that for every kilowatt hour you throw out into the grid, we're going to give you a kilowatt hour credit. 1 for 1. So right now it makes sense to the homeowner because what they've done is they've turned the utility in the grid into your bank, into your storage device. So when I throw stuff out there, it says, all right, we got your electrons. We're going to hold them for a financial credit later on your electric bill. And that's what gives you the payback on all this. So that's the only thing we have going for us right now is the economics. Now you throw in storage. Storage is big because now those electrons can be managed. I'm not going to give them to the grid right now. I'm going to store them. And I'm storing them for later for whatever use that I want to. And you have more control over them, a little bit more. And power goes out. So what? I get a little bit of energy left. My critical load setters, my refrigerator, my well pump, maybe my heating source. Maybe those things can continue to run. Anybody remember the ice storm in Halloween? Yeah. I was out of power for 9 days up in Montague. So, yeah, I remember it. I still don't have solar, though, or batteries. I'll tell you why in a minute. But anyway, the next thing is the energy management portion of that, which if you have power that's being produced and you have power being stored, what are you going to do with it? What are you managing? What do you do with it now? So the energy management part of it comes up is when you're looking at your energy curves. And you say, okay, so in the morning, I've got a little bit of power I use. In the afternoon, my solar is going to charge all my batteries. What am I going to do with the end of the night? Well, if you came home and you started using it right away, you may use it all up in a short amount of time. Maybe you say to yourself, when my house goes to sleep, when we go to bed, we're going to have the house run by the battery. So we're not going to pull anything from the grid at all. I'm going to leave about 20% of my batteries just in case the power goes off and I need it. So you can actually manage what happens. You can manage the time of day or anything else. Or maybe you have a cycle in your home where you say, at night, what we're going to do is every Wednesday we're going to wash and dry our clothes. So this is when we're going to use our storage. We're going to make sure that we have 100% of our storage available for Wednesday and we can use all that power for that. It's management. I'm not saying you do it, it's just management. One of the next key components that we're looking at, which is a part of that management cycle, is heating and cooling. Everybody familiar with air source heat pumps? Okay. So now you have a way to heat and cool your home, which becomes even more important because you're eliminating those fossil fuel inputs from your home. The overall goal of this is not only to manage your energy, but to control your energy costs. And there's a good reason for that. So heating and cooling through air source heat pumps, and the final piece of that is the transportation piece. And what's that? Electric cars. What does an electric car offer you? Besides transportation, it's clean energy, it's sleek, it's fun, there's a lot of pep. Storage. The next link for electric vehicles is not only to come home and be charged by your battery, but also to be your backup battery if you don't have one. That's the next piece of technology we're working on. How to take your plug-in vehicle, and if your power should go off, to say, oh, I have storage here. I can only give you so much because otherwise I can't get to work in the morning, but I got a little bit of energy for you here if you need it. All these things combined change the stupid power plant that just sits there and blows electrons out into something that's actually viable for the residential home. So think about a home that's fully connected, and this is what we're doing as a part of our vision. Northeast Solar's electrical contracting. We offer air source heat pumps. We offer storage. We offer EV chargers, solar, the whole package. So if you look at it in a package like that, we can take somebody who has a lifestyle which is the gasoline car, utility, oil furnace, gas furnace, whatever the case may be, and completely convert them to a home that produces its own produces its own power, manages its own power, and essentially makes itself sustainable. I wouldn't call them a net zero home. I mean, maybe you've heard this here already because this is kind of a building science, but there's no such thing as net zero buildings. Only net zero people. Because you can have a net zero building, and if you don't have a net zero person living in it, it's no longer net zero. Because the minute they open the windows or use too much energy, etc. So this is what we see the residential power plant becoming. This is the overall vision. It's not just the solar is on the roof and the integration of it is important. It's that we need to see it as a combined system. Something that produces, stores, manages, takes care of heating, cooling, and transportation needs. Now, I'll go over some of the hurdles of that in a bit. So, when we were talking about the residential homeowner, anybody ever sail? Everybody ever been on a sailboat overnight for a period of time? Does anybody know how to look for your wattages and how much your battery's draining and how much energy? Every time you flip a switch on a boat, the little meter goes, and you look at how much you're draining and how much battery you got left, and you're constantly managing that system because you don't want to be out of power and you want to make sure that you can charge power, your turbine comes up, everything else. And that's essentially what you do in a home. So this is a screenshot of a client who has both solar and batteries. So the green down below is the storage, and the blue is the production of the solar system, and the brown, well, it looks brown, it's orange in our other screens, is its consumption. So typical homeowner, he comes up with a little bit of energy in the morning, sun produced in the afternoon, a little more consumption at night. But you can see where the battery comes in to help offset a lot of that stuff. So this is as good as it gets right now with what we have available in technology, except if you added air source heat pumps or anything else. So he's still exported 113 kilowatts to the grid. 113, watts. Watt hours. So you put 113 watts out. He put 319 to storage, and he produced 505 for the day. So he had what he consumed. So this is as good as it gets for today, but it's information. So when we come in and we bring somebody in and we say, sit down with them and we say, okay, everybody says, oh, I'd like to go solar. And the primary reason is that I want to go green. I want to get rid of my utility bill. I've heard about this stuff. My neighbor's got one now, and I'm not going to let him get away with something that I want also. I'm going to have just I want a bigger piece of solar than he's got. You got what we call the solar bling. So the first thing we do with them is sit down and look at the education part of that part. So as you guys have already indicated, you really don't know how much power you've used at your household or what you use it on or anything else. Now we can install monitors, which we do. We have a little thing called a sense monitor that we can plug into someone's home, and it reads the different variations on the electrical power that's pulled by motors, compressors, all the things that your house uses, and can pretty much about 65 to 80%, depending on the type of systems, actually identify what you're using. It says, oh, you're using a dehumidifier, and it'll tell you, I've just found a dehumidifier. And you say, yep, that's my dehumidifier. And then what it does is it actually learns what's going on in your house, what happens. And it also will track what's always on. So it'll tell you how much energy you're using consistently all the time. This is your always on stuff. What's always on in a household? What's that? Not always on. You shut the lights off at night to go to sleep. Fridge is not always on. Cycles on and off. Wi-Fi. Your cable box. The little light on your toaster when you plug it in. The little light on the microwave when you plug it in. All these phantom loads in your house build up and build up and build up. And it's really surprising the first time I go into someone's house and say, you've just bought solar and you're interested in it and you're all excited about it. We're going to install a monitor in your house so you can get a sense of what you're using already. Because we'll have people that'll come in and we'll say, they have a beautiful house and a big, beautiful roof. And we go, oh, yeah, we can put 8 kilowatts on your roof. And they go, great. They said, that's only going to be about 50% of your usage. And they go, what? No, you're still going to pay about 50% electrical bill. They go, well, that's solar's no good. I go, oh, wait a minute. We can give you 10,000 kilowatt hours a year. That other 10,000 kilowatt hours is your issue. It's not our issue. We didn't create that consumption profile. We didn't look at that and say, you have to have 20,000 kilowatt hours a year, which, by the way, is a lot. But people do. You know, you walk into people's houses and they'll have a lit hallway with all their artwork. They'll have a koi pond bubbling in the background. They'll have the hot tub gurgling out there and the pool's going. And they're wondering why their electric bill is almost $1,000 a month. It's awareness. So after we have gone through these steps with clients, one of the things that we want them to understand is we're installing a power plant on their roof. It's not just solar. We look at it as a power plant. It's like any other power plant out there that generates electricity for people. What do you want to do with this power plant? What is it that you want to create from it? Do you want to create a fossil fuel environment? Do you want to have to be free of the economics of the investor-owned utilities? What is it you want to do? Do you want to heat? Do you want to cool? Do you want to manage it? All these things are potentials with this. And when you get into the management phase of it, it's starting to look at that stuff, bringing in awareness, bringing in the education of what a kilowatt hour is and how it's generated. Most people don't know what a kilowatt hour is. They don't know how to do the watt hour to the kilowatt hour to the megawatt hour. They don't know how it works in their lifestyle. So bringing all this awareness into us is part of the key thing that we do as a company. Because we want them to start to understand it's not just, okay, my utility bill this month is $0. I'm really excited by that. That's just like step one. That's the only thing that we could do for them for the last 10 years is just eliminate their electric bill. This is what we're trying to build in next. And it's really important for the future because there's laws in California currently. We've explored laws in some of the communities here where they're starting to mandate in the building codes that a house has to be solar ready. It has to be ready for solar. There's a series of buildings, and I can't remember the name of the farm now, but it's down by Atkins that are just being built. They built the first one, and we're partnered up with them, and each of those buildings is solar ready. They're using air source heat pumps. They're going to be using storage. So those buildings that are being, those residential buildings are being built, are being intentionally designed along this platform. They're going to produce their own power. They're going to manage their own power. They're going to store their own power. They're going to create systems. They're going to work off that power grid. So why do we do this? Why does our company do it, and what are we looking for to get out of this? The first of all is to change the trajectory of energy consumption. And what does that mean? Well, I just mentioned a few different times. We don't know the amount of power that we use or why. Currently, industry, technology, everything else except for, LEED certification and your, I forget the score now for electrical, but they don't focus a lot on how much energy something uses. They just plug it in. Most of the stuff that you buy nowadays doesn't have an energy consumption in plan, nor does it have a way to connect to your home to say that, oh, we have enough power to actually use this right now. We should be doing this. The dehumidifier can go on a little bit here, and we can shut it off here because we have all this energy available. Nothing really communicates currently. And if we understood what our energy usage is, we want to drive down that consumption rate, or we want to manage it better. And that will help stabilize the energy profile that we have in the United States and around the world, obviously. And we're one of the largest consumers, so it helps for us. So that's one of the things we want to do. We really want to change that trajectory so it's going down. People aren't relying on that energy as much. The second is to reduce the economic shock. And probably most people don't have a relationship with that currently. But I remember when David Cash was the head of the DOER back a decade ago. And one of the things he talked about, and one of the things that clicked for me, and one of the reasons I got into this business, there's a lot of reasons I did, was we don't produce any local energy in Massachusetts. We import all of it. So to get that energy, that's before solar farms and everything else, we have to pay for that. So the price of electricity, and that's billions of dollars. So if the price of electricity goes up a couple of cents, It's actually an economic shock. You're taking a couple of cents times all the kilowatt hours that's consumed in Massachusetts, and you're exporting those dollars out of the state. So for our homeowners, what solar allows it to do is to eliminate, almost reduce that kind of economic shock. We look at this as a big plus. One of the things that we're the proudest about our company is that we've returned tens of millions of dollars back into the local economy. How do we do that? Well, somebody puts a power plant on the roof. We don't lease them. We don't third-party own them. It's all direct buy. So the homeowner owns the power plant, and they get all the economic value. So if they had $100 a month they were spending on electricity, after the system is paid back, after the incentives and everything else, which takes about 3 to 5 years, that $100 stays in their pocket. For most households, that $100 can represent 3 hours of work a week. Whatever that number is. That's now theirs. Electricity can go up to 40 cents a kilowatt hour. Doesn't matter. Just improves their economic benefit. So reducing the economic shock or keeping all those dollars local is big. So we return about $3.8 million a year to the local economy, just with the systems we have installed. That's $3.8 million. You can use whatever multiplier you want on that. That's $3.8 million that are going back to local restaurants, local businesses, whatever and we're just one small company. So you can imagine the multiplier on that, which is quite huge. The next thing is to improve grid resiliency. So we have kind of a thing that we do, or we talk about, what if the grid went down and nobody knew? That's kind of one of those things that happens. So you're thinking about the grid goes down, and if you're home with storage or whatever else, it doesn't affect you as much. But more importantly, the more that we integrate solar in this fashion, the more the utility has to change their business model. Currently, the business model of the utility is we buy power from outside. Well, essentially, they make the money off the telephone wires or the lines and the poles in the power plants. So when you see about big initiatives from utilities like we'd like to bring hydro from Canada for renewable, it's only because they want to spend $1 billion, get a guaranteed return of 8% on that $1 billion for their shareholders, and they can claim they did something good, when in fact it doesn't create any independence, any resiliency whatsoever. The way that we see improved grid resiliency is, one, is that individual homes can stay online. Power goes out, your electric car is still there, your power is still there, you can still turn on some lights, you can still feed yourself, you can still refrigerate your food. All those things are still possible. But if the grid would start to change their business model, and instead of putting in their substations where they only transfer electricity from one place to another and absorb all the stuff from solar, if they actually put storage in there also, that would go a long way. Because now you got grid resiliency everywhere. Storage creates that grid resiliency. We call them microgrids. So we have much more microgrids. So one of the things that residential solar can do, even on a local level, is produce a lot of resiliency. Has anybody heard of the Massachusetts Demand Response Program, or the virtual power plant? It's a new program out from the state of Massachusetts, the DOER, that essentially is paying people to put batteries in their homes. And the grid's saying, we would like to control that battery. So we'll pay you to put the battery in your home, and during certain times of the year, we're going to have a demand from you that we want to pull that power from your battery. We want to release it on our schedule. Now, this is the power company seeing the benefits of storage and the management of that storage. So what they're saying is, oh, we're going to have a really hot day. It's going to get up over 100 degrees a day. So we know we're going to have an energy incident or an energy demand at this certain point. So what they're doing is they're trying to install thousands of batteries all over the Commonwealth. And at a point, they can go, release your energy. So instead of buying from a fossil fuel plant or another plant off-grid, or having to buy all that power and not sure they're going to use it, they can control what happens locally. They have a virtual power plant. Megawatts of power available to them through locally installed storage. And then after they use your power over the course of a month on these events, they send you a check. Say, thank you very much for the use of your battery and your time. Thank you. And that helps pay the battery back faster. So the utilities even come to the realization that all these little residential solar power plants, if you multiply them, the force multiplier of them becomes enough to be that power plant they keep thinking about they may need for backup. And not only that, in areas, they can actually use that power in events of emergencies or anything else. So they realize there's a big benefit to that. So this virtual power plant thing will probably be the biggest thing that will start moving batteries into the residential market quicker. For just the sense of being able to manage power locally. If we're going to produce it instead of just, because when you blow it out into the grid, it's, your neighbors really can't, it's going to be absorbed somewhere, but it's not managed. You can't use it the way you'd like to. And the last thing that we like to do is, the big thing, is just to, we'd like to get away from the decentralized grid. So the grid that we know today is extremely archaic. We pay, I don't know if you pay, but if you have an electric bill, you pay for the maintenance, upgrade, and retrofitting of the grid. And the grid is still so, it's still so fragile. It's got a lot of vulnerabilities in it. It relies on outside power plants. And because our local utilities that were used to be local with most places, there's a few communities like Holyoke still owns their own power, Chicopee, South Hadley, some still have their own, what we call, they're just locally owned electrical companies. The big grids, what we need to do is we need to kind of start decentralizing those and just saying that we have enough of this, enough residential power storage management that we can control microgrids. They need to incorporate those microgrids on their own, and we can decentralize that. We can kind of break up that utility model because it's essentially, well, in my opinion, it's a rent model. They just want to collect the rent from you. That's essentially all they want to do. They want to see that check coming in every month. They don't want to invest in anything. And we realize that because we're running across a lot of hurdles with them interconnecting. We're running up against areas that we can't install any more solar in because there's too much solar backfeeding into the lines and it can't absorb it. It's only because they haven't upgraded it all. So those primarily are the points that we look at. Most importantly is the change trajectory and the economic impact. But here's the things that makes what we do probably the most difficult. Typical power plant costs about $20,000. It's less than most new cars today, but it's still a lot of money. And there isn't a lot of money in the economy for this type of expenditure. You have to be in a position where you have, one, you have to own a house, which is kind of the biggest step for everyone, especially after you move out of college, especially if you have college debt. There's only so much money that goes around. So buying a power plant is kind of the most difficult thing for people to overcome. The cost of it can be mitigated. The state's got all kinds of incentive programs. They have low interest loans out there, zero down loans. They even have what they call income-based loan support, which will forgive a portion of the principal if your income level is over a certain amount. This helps, but won't go everywhere. Not everyone is going to, first of all, not everyone believes that it's a benefit. But second, when you sit down with them, and as much as they'd like to go solar, they can't because the incentives just aren't good enough. If you can positively cash flow it, meaning that if you borrow money, you're still going to save money, that's great. But we're past that point now in this curve. And it's the current, in our state anyway, the current administration isn't pushing the incentives hard enough, and they're also very unstable. So cost is a big factor on that. The other thing is azimuth and shade. Most houses, like this house here, I put that picture in there because that person made a decision. So that house wasn't originally built for solar. And we don't consider that an attractive install. It looks nice, it's fine. But they did what they could with what they had. I mean, that's a commitment. When you're, that's your curb view. And what's another hurdle that isn't up there that we talk about a lot, which is the husband's all excited about solar. You know, all this technology. I'm going to put solar in, batteries, and be survivalist. I'm going to take care of everything we have in the house. And wife goes, that's ugly. We're not putting it on our house. And we get those conversations all the time. But anyway, azimuth and shade. If it isn't facing there, if the only available space you have open is north, it ain't happening. You're just not going to get enough out of it. East or west is fine. West is better. South is great. Trees. I don't have solar on my home. When I bought my home, or actually built my home, and it's a long time ago for you guys, 1991, there was one very large, nice oak tree on the property. There was a couple of them, but there was one particularly nice. And I knew that if I tucked my home in close enough without killing the roots and put it in there, it would shade me and create a nice crown for everything that I needed, because that's the way I thought back then. Keep the house cool in the summertime, love the oak tree. Still have it. I still don't have what it takes to cut down that tree so I could have solar. Plus, trees do a better job of sucking out carbon than PV does offsetting it, in my opinion. If it was the opposite way around, we just cut down the Amazon rainforest and throw in a bunch of panels, we'd be all set. I don't think that would work. So we run across a lot of this in New England, especially because of slate. The way buildings are built, the old roof structures. A lot of times when you go into somebody's house, you look at the way that whoever built the house put the structure together, and the structural engineer will go, no, not happening here. Because you put this 3 pounds per square inch and add it to that roof, and there are 3 layers of asphalt shingles they've already got up there. The first big snowstorm, and the roof's going to be pushed over. So a lot of that is a barrier. Now, I talked about earlier that Massachusetts, there's a few communities anyway, they're looking at making solar-ready homes. So really, what does that mean to a homeowner? It means that when they're sitting with their builder, they have to consider how they do their landscaping, where they site the home on the property. How are they going to put the azimuth? Is the design going to be for a very large roof, a very big roof? So when you're thinking about how much energy you want to produce, you go, oh, I'd like 2 electric cars, I'd like air source heat pumps, I'd like to have all the amenities that I currently have. Well, you're going to need 15,000 kilowatts, 20,000 kilowatts. So you're going to need a huge system. You're going to need a lot of energy per square foot to be produced, so you're going to need a really big roof. So that's a consideration. So when you talk about azimuth and shade, you're also going to talk about size. You're going to talk about all those hurdles. But primarily, the azimuth and shade is probably the most difficult thing to come over, because we have a lot of people who would love to do this. But we'd have to deforest their property. We have to go in there and just cut everything down, and it wouldn't be the same place for them. So that's one of the hurdles. The other thing we talked about before is the grid. Eversource hates us. And I'll just say that out loud and open. They've done everything possible to make it as difficult as possible, as frustrating for the client as possible, anything they can do for it. When we started installing solar 10 years ago, there was 4 people in their distributed generation group. They would take all the applications in, process them, say, okay, you're ready to install. Today, later, we've got all these hundreds, thousands of installs, and people doing it every day. They still got 4 people. Because they don't want to put any money into it. Their customer service, you've got a problem with your net metering, you got a problem with your bill, all that problem becomes a problem. What I talked about is changing the grid business model is essentially that. If we could get the grid to be kind of an infrastructure for the plugging in of renewables, this would go a long way to making this happen. The government. Great administration out there currently, all supportive of us. This really offsets a lot of it, because the narrative out there from the government is what drives things. It really drives things. Back in the previous administration, we had a lot of support for renewable energy. We had a lot of talk about renewable energy. A lot of people wanted to be involved in renewable energy. Most of the people that came to work for us during that time were because they were all excited about what we did. Now, when you have somebody or an administration or an energy secretary that's out there saying nothing positive about solar, nothing positive about wind, cancer-causing windmills, you have the opposite effect of it. Nobody really thinks that it's important to do this. Nobody thinks that it's a necessary thing to do, when it truly is, because your planet's not going to look like the planet I grew up on. I guarantee you that. So this is really important, and that's probably one of the biggest things that we have to overcome right now is our local government and our federal government are not supportive enough. If we put the amount of money that we put into the other industries to support them and to keep them running on the energy side of things, we'd be much further along. Finally, just kind of wrap it up, because I know they gave me so much time here. I think I've used just about all of it. The overall conclusions for this is that, most of you, I believe, are in the building sciences and understanding what you're doing in building sciences and everything else. This is really the future that we want you to design for us. What we've been doing on our end is we've taken a technology. They said, oh, we got solar panels, and we're going to incentivize the production of those, and we're going to manufacture lots of them, and we're going to create all these new companies, and we're going to go out and install and build these panels. And the industry has been pushing in directions to try to get stuff going, and we're retrofitting everything. We're not going into a home that's plug and play. We're not going into a mindset that people are looking at and saying, we're going to design a home that's going to work for you. We're going to design a home that you can live in. We're going to design a home that's going to provide security. It's going to provide energy. It's going to eliminate the need for plugging you into the gas line or get a fuel oil delivery or have all these other things that happen. We're going to design a home for you from scratch. One of the reasons I wanted to do this talk was that you are the ones that will do this. We're currently pushing the retrofits out there. We're trying to keep the government agencies moving. We're trying to change legislation to make sure that we can get more support for batteries. We can get some more support for storage because we need just a little longer runway. Another 10 years, another decade, I think we'll have some amazing technologies that are coming out. They're coming out quite a bit now. We announce stuff all the time and new stuff coming out. But it's really where we start looking at holistic systems within the residential marketplace anyway, where we think there's a big potential. Siting, design, understanding the consumption and power, how to store batteries, how to produce power and how to store energy. And that's really what it's all about. So that's kind of, in a long way, this was a lot of information dumped in a relatively short amount of time. That is the vision that we kind of have for everything. So in the Valley currently, there's tens of thousands of power plants. When you drive by them, think about how they're not doing anything yet. Think about how they could do something more. Think about how beneficial they can be overall. Think about how you can make that change in that kind of marketplace and what can happen in that marketplace. So I'll leave you one last thing. One is I know that a lot of our original employees came from colleges locally and stuff, from GCC, UMass, and everything else. And this is just a shameless ask, but if you have friends out there, we have one more position we're opening up out there. So we're a site visit tech. It's a full-time position. We just got awarded the Solarized Belchertown, where we're going to be rolling out all this stuff over there in Belchertown. So network and let us know. And you can just have them reach out to us directly. All right. That's all I have. Thank you.